comes a new challenger!
What's up YouTube? Welcome back to another video with Challenger TCG. My name is Villionaire and I'm joined today by my teammates AlexanderTheGreatest above me and Collin Kaiser below me. Today we're doing a different style of video. We're going to be doing some tournament commentary. We haven't done anything like this before, but we just had the National Open for China happen this last weekend, and we wanted to cover the finals match to give our thoughts on it. Also kind of give you guys an example of a competitive VOD review, which we offer on our Metafy right now. So check that out if you haven't checked out our Metafy. So here is the Kaisa list. What do you guys think about this?
Yeah, this is a very interesting list, not one that we've really seen up until this point. Primarily the two main deck Acathian Reigns as well as two main deck Time Warps seem to be a pretty unique thing that are kind of built around this 3 retreat core package that our player here is using to ramp in order to be able to play those cards properly on time, is what it seems like. Past that, you see kind of our basic creature suite, with the exception of only being 7 2-drops, which I personally think is a little too low, but that's my personal take. What do you think, Alex?
I see, for me, I want to play like 9 turn 1 plays when you're going first, because you don't want to miss like ever. Now, going second, you get a few more here. You're up to 10 if you're going second, but 7 going first seems so rough to me. In fact, there's actually not even that many creatures in this deck. Like, it is not unreasonable that you could even maybe in a mirror like run this deck out of creatures depending on how you're playing. Like, especially if there's a lot of Acathian Reigns post board. I mean, I think it's a little risky, but I do like the inclusion of Acathian Reign in the main. I think that's going to give him a lot of equity in a mirror match. Time Warp 2 is an interesting ad. We've not seen a lot of that. I've heard a lot of people talking about it, but this is the first time I've actually seen it in a tournament deck list. So it's certainly, it's not so far out there, but it's definitely a little bit different than some of the lists we've seen up to this point.
Yeah, I think just to add on to what Alex said, like the fact that we don't have very many haste creatures in the deck outside of our champion, of course, and we have like Darius, which kind of has haste. We have the Watcher, of course, which is our big accelerate unit, but we don't have like Sprite Mothers, even in the board. We don't have Legion Rearguards, so in regards to what Alex said, being able to be run out of creatures is really tough, and you just can't really score points without having hasters. I mean, I guess the 3 retreats might help you there, because you get access to your Kaisas again, you can pull your Dariuses back and things like that, but it does seem pretty tough, I would imagine, in a mirror, especially if they're more heavy on the removal package.
The only other thing I'd like to mention is the field choices and our Grove of the God Willow, the Dreaming Tree, and Star-Tipped Peak, which I also found to be very unique choices. Namely that this player is using 2 field spells, or battlefields, rather, that you need to hold, which is not something that Kaisa is traditionally known for using. How do you feel about that inclusion, Anton, when it comes to battlefield selection?
Yeah, I think that we were just talking about it earlier too in testing. I think that there's some merit to the Grove. I was really skeptical about the channel battlefield. Just seems a little off to me. I don't think that Kaisa's typically a deck that holds very often. I mean, especially like when you're playing retreats and stuff, you're going to be pulling your guys back. We would definitely have to test it a little more to see. I could see how going first you might want one of these. I just don't think that you're holding too often with this deck, and especially in the mirror match, you're always just fighting to keep anything on the board. So it's definitely an interesting choice. Definitely an interesting choice.
So I think I know what his line of thinking here is, at least this is what my line of thinking is playing those battlefields, is he's trying to hedge against the Aurora decks and potentially the Yi decks, which are not traditionally so great at pushing into battlefields themselves. So against the Aurora decks, you are going to get a hold more than likely. Ramping up against those Aurora decks is actually kind of nice because you do get to play all these power-hungry spells, especially when you often need to string multiple together to actually kill one of these bigger units once they actually get into the battlefield. Especially against things like Dead Bloom, where it does have deflect, and you do often need to spend multiple power to actually get rid of it. So that's not too terrible there. And then versus Yi, again, like, if you're able to just defend and ramp up for 1 turn, I think that's pretty good. Although I will say it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, Yi definitely is going to be doing a lot of holding, so giving them the ramp up might not be ideal. That's the only real application I could see for these battlefields, so I'm not 100% certain on the thinking, but that's where I kind of would be at.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's definitely interesting. We'll have to see how it actually plays out in the match and see if our player here is able to actually hold these battlefields consistently, or if it ends up just being a pain point for him. And moving on, it seems like we have the Yi list, which is a very, very non-traditional list. I don't think I've seen anything even close to a list like this, and at least as far as we've seen from previous events as well as events over here in the States. What do you all think of this Yi list with the one Dead Bloom, the 3 Kianas in the main? Usually I feel like that's a card that we see out of the board, as well as no ramp outside of the Find Your Centers.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that there's very little ramp here because typically the builds that play this much top end have some amount of ramp. The one Dead Bloom is kind of interesting to me too because I think this is one of the stronger cards in the deck, especially against Kaisa, where it has that deflect like we talked about, where it can get into those battlefields and kind of just eat a battlefield, stay in there, and then it's a 10 on defense with the Yi effect. It's just a very, very hard card for Kaisa to actually remove, but he's only opting to play one of them. So I do think that decision is interesting. And then we've got like this suite of one-ofs here. We've got Confront as a one-of. We've got Sabotage as a one-of. We've got Rune Prison as a one-of, which is a card that doesn't even see that much play. Sometimes you see it in the side, but rarely ever in the main. So it's kind of an interesting decision here. I've seen Kianas before, but not traditionally in this build. Usually it's in the more traditional low-to-the-ground Yi builds. So this is very interesting so far, but he did make it to finals, so maybe he knows something we don't.
Yeah, this was over a 2,000-man event, so we definitely don't want to take it away from the player making it to finals. Obviously, this list was good enough to crush through a very, very grueling and long tournament with a ton of players in it. It's interesting because we've had kind of like 3 speeds of Yi. We had this old low-to-the-ground version, then we kind of had this more mid-range top-end version, and then, of course, we go really deep on the top end with the Aurora variants. This is kind of something in the middle of the first version with the low to the ground and the more mid-range version. It's like a 4th iteration that's kind of developed. I guess maybe the Dead Bloom is not really good in Yi mirrors, so maybe this guy was just teching more for Yi mirrors, especially with a card like Ruin Prison. That's what I would imagine he's doing because that card's definitely not doing much against Kaisa. Definitely an interesting decision. I personally think I would want to be on more Dead Blooms or maybe more Tasty Faithfuls, but clearly this worked for this player. And he also does have more ramp in the board, so maybe he just felt that in his game 1s, having access to more ramp spells just wasn't really what he wanted against the majority of the field.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what this sideboard configuration ends up looking after game 1. It's also possible, based on previous events that they've had, that they did not expect Kaisa to be as popular as she actually ended up being. But I guess we'll have to see as the matches play out.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially given that Master Yi had just won the last major event in China prior to this one happening.
Right. We've definitely seen a fall off of Kaisa in the most recent large events over in China. But now with this seemingly this inclusion of Acathian Rain and Time Warp in the main deck, we're seeing very much so a resurgence in her power level and popularity, with her having the highest play rate and one of the highest win rates of any deck archetype in this event.
All right, and we're now heading into game 1. Here comes our 2 players.
Yeah, we'll say that they have done an amazing job of having a show of all of this for this event. Some of the prizes, including the ring, seem incredible. They've got this massive stage. They really want to make a show of it, as Riot is good at doing, and I'm excited as we have these big circuits coming over to us. If we'll have even a fraction of this level of production quality, I'll be extremely happy.
Yeah, the sets are super sick. I'm a big fan.
As for our game 1 battlefields here, I'm definitely expecting to see a looking at the Yi players list, I'm expecting to see a Vile Maw's layer, as it seems to be kind of their neutral thing, as you want the Obelisk of Power going second and the Grove of the Godwilla going first in order to start snowballing your holds. Out of the Kaisa list, I would expect to see the Dreaming Tree. Let's see. Oh, they're just doing a leader reveal right now. But the Dreaming Tree seems to be the consistent going first, and then post-board, you're able to remove cards like Retreat and Cleave that aren't quite as powerful when you're at the Dreaming Tree. But we'll have to see as they get to this reveal.
And of course, this is a big production, so you know they're making sure everything is good on the caster's end and production's end. Looks like we're getting the reveals now. Yep, Dreaming Tree, indeed.
We do see the Dreaming Tree, as is expected.
Yeah, this is your typical best one for Kaisa going first. This also gives you just the most sideboard flexibility because you have a lot of cards in your deck that trigger off of the Dreaming Tree, and those become flex slots once you're out of the Dreaming Tree and moving into your other battlefields, which just gives you maximum sideboard flexibility.
And the Vile Mausoleer out of the Yi player is a very interesting choice. To be honest, I would have expected this to be a little bit more potentially powerful post-board when the player has access to more Deadbloom Predators, as that seems to be kind of the best use for it, is to stick a Deadbloom Predator there when they can't retreat their units out to prevent it from going in for free. But it also has some niche applications with Yi being the only thing that can gank out of the point, because it just prevents you from going back to base, but does not prevent you from ganking to the other point.
Yeah, we see Valmaz a lot in like Misfortune because she can actually kind of abuse it by putting massive units into that point, and ganking actually works to pull them out. It says that units can't move back to the base, but you can move from battlefield to battlefield if you have ganking, but Master Yi, of course, doesn't have access to that. Though he does have a big ganking unit on his actual champion, so maybe we might see that come into play.
Looks like we have the Kaisa player here winning the die roll. I'm sure they're very happy about that.
Oh, yeah. All right, starting to draw our openers.
Now, going into our mulligan decisions, I'm curious what this player will prioritize over others. We also don't entirely know if it's open deck list or if they know what they're going into, if either of them know any of the spicy tech that's coming out of either of them. But I think that kind of adds the mystery of it all.
I have to imagine with the stream setup, usually they do open deck list, because if either of these players had been on stream before, then they would have had their deck list effectively revealed. So usually when there's a stream, they do open deck list.
Yeah, that has kind of been the history of what we've seen from card games. It looks like our Kaisa player has a Darius, a Hextech Bolt, and 2 Watchful Sentries is what I'm looking at, which is pretty solid opening hand. I think you want access to the Hextech Bolt, and Darius is an extremely powerful card, so I honestly would only be surprised. Yeah, I was about to say I would expect the Darius to go and potentially one of the 2-cost units, as you only really need the 1 to play on turn 1.
Yeah, looks like that's exactly what he did.
As for
He's got a good go second hand.
Yeah, E players keeping the Kiana interesting. I mean, I guess it's the type of card that you want to see early to start really getting those conquer effects. But we'll have to see how it plays out. Hopefully it's able to get a lot of value.
Loving the setup, though. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
the Misfortune Trophy card that you get for getting first place. Of course, I think they give out more of those in Top Cut in the China events than what we currently have posted coming to our regionals. But here we go, off to a start, one of each rune. And this should just be a Watchful Sentry, right? Yep. Oh, Ravenbloom Student. He had a Ravenbloom Student.
Interesting.
I think he drew
I
that.
typically like playing the Watchful Sentry first, just because it's never really the goal to hold points early with Kaisa. You want to be casting and playing your units, and when you have a Watchful Sentry out, you can just kind of let your units die, but with the Student, you're kind of forced to be able to protect it. And the E player going for a ramp on turn 1. Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a good rule of thumb too. If you're going first, you play the smaller units that you're okay with dying. Whereas if you go second, you might actually have to capture that battlefield. So you actually want the bigger one when you go second, versus first, you just want the one that you can throw away and not care because it's going to replace itself.
Exactly.
So I do think that's an interesting decision here.
Yeah, like here he just drew the Noxus Hopeful. So like that now his turn it can be Watchful Sentry plus Noxus Hopeful, and he will tap out doing that, but then that basically means that he's tapping out and having to force to move the Student in, basically giving it up for free if your opponent has like a haste unit or just a way to trade on it. Thankfully, the Yi player did just play a ramp spell, so we're probably not getting too punished here.
Yeah.
Now, I will say one thing, that one reason you do start with this Ravenbloom Student is, like we discussed before, Yi's not actually very good at getting into those battlefields. And if he has any sort of combat trick, or he draws any sort of like Stupefy, or what is it? If he Hextech Bolt, which we already saw, it does actually let him protect that battlefield a little bit better because he has all that interaction. But he's just tapping out here anyways.
Interesting. Going immediately for the Kaisa, I'm assuming that they just want to try and generate some value, but given the fact that they're committing the Ravenbloom student to the Dreaming Tree, if they go for the Kaisa Conquer next turn, it'll be stuck at that Vilemaw's lair, unless they have access to the tree, which I don't believe I saw in our Kaisa player's hand yet. I'm curious what their reasoning is for this over playing the Watchful Sentry plus the Noxious Hopeful.
Yeah, thankfully we're not going to get blown out by Charm like we would if our opponent had actually had a turn 1 play that was a body. Not only would he probably have been able to kill our student, but we would have also lost our Kaisa to the Charm, so yeah, just some interesting plays, but I can see if your opponent starts with a ramp spell, why it's just pretty easy to make these plays and not be too worried since they don't have a body to take advantage of the Charm.
Definitely fortunate from our Kaisa player's perspective, but the CE list is also slightly lower on turn 1 plays on the draws. It only plays 2 first mates instead of the traditional 3 that we're used to seeing. And who knows, maybe that this Yi player has determined that it's just better to try and accelerate the game plan, play that ramp spell turn 1 over playing a unit, because you need to be able to actually play your large units as quickly as possible in order to really win against these Kaisa decks.
Kaisa to the Vilemaw's lair, that means he's not going to be able to retreat it to take advantage of Kaisa's. Of course, he does play 3 retreat, so I don't know if we saw him pick one up, but he does have a lot of ways to pull units out.
Now, this Kiana is interesting because it does have deflect, so he doesn't have a great, clean way to actually get rid of it here. Even if it does end up moving into one of these battlefields, he's still going to end up having to pay an extra power, more than likely, to actually be able to get rid of this. And that is one place where Kiana really does shine in a meta full of Kaisas, that it does have deflect, and those deflect units are very hard to actually get rid of.
Yeah. Oh, I do see that last card there. Looks like it's either a Stupefy or a Retreat. I'm assuming a Retreat.
It looks like
No,
Cleave and a
it's a
Bolt.
Cleave and a Hextech. Yeah, it's Cleave and a Hextech Bolt.
I see. So maybe using that Bolt, they could potentially combine to kill this Kaisa through like a buff spell, as we saw Discipline in the Yi player's hand, but it's never the play that you want to be making. I could also see trying to load up one of these points, as clearly this player, given their battlefield choice selection, thinks it's pretty strong to just have units in a battlefield and try to hold.
Is that another champion unit Kaisa in the
That's what it looks like,
player's
yeah.
hand? Yeah. Looks like he's actually... Whoa, the camera's shaking in the production. But yeah, it looks like he's actually playing an additional Kaisa in his deck.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, the deck list that we saw posted actually only had 39 cards in it, so I'm guessing that they just did not include that additional Kaisa there. And it does make sense. The Kaisa unit is extremely powerful and one of the better things that you can be playing.
They're being real generous with time right now. I mean, this has been like a way over a minute to make this play here, I feel like.
Yeah. It is, in fact, a second Kaisa. Wow.
Yeah, I feel the second Kaisa makes the 3 retreats make a lot more sense. I think that card just plays so well with this champion.
Curious to see if we're going to see a Noxious Hopeful committed to this point with the Kaisa, as 8 might is a much larger amount to get through. Now we see the Watchful Sentry at base. So
he really went in the tank to play this Kaisa. What's he scared of? Why did he that was a really, really deep in thought for what seems to be such a simple line.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's just the nerves of playing for the finals. Players are prone to doing that, and especially given that the timer is counting up, it appears to be an untimed finals. So being the first event, maybe they're not as...
if it's untimed... Yeah, so typically with untimed finals, what you see is you do still have to respect like a pace of play, so to speak, but judges are very, very lenient with it because it's untimed, so you're kind of just trying... It's like a chess match, like when you don't have the clock, like you're just kind of trying to give them as much time to make the most optimal play, especially when you're on stream. You want to put on a good show. You don't want anybody to have to rush.
We do have 2 charms in the hand, so Kiana moving to this open battlefield and then charming in both Kaisas feels like it's really powerful, especially with the opponent's tapped out. Like there's really no counterplay to it, so I mean I would expect to see that here.
Yeah, especially because the Kiana will be able to ramp, putting you up to 8 runes in play. It'll double charm will put you down to 6, but then you'll go back up to 8 in order to play what appeared to be a Dead Bloom Predator in the player's hand. I can only see that it costed 8.
Yeah, he did have a
see
dead
if
bloom.
that's a line.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Interesting. So he's going to take a more conservative line. He could have actually moved into this Kaisa point. Then he could have used his buff right here to get over the Kaisa, win the showdown there, and then grab 2 more guys with the charm, just like that. Or he could keep the extra charm, just use the pump, and then still get rid of both of the Kaisas there, and be left with at least three energy remaining.
Yeah, I think that's the play that I personally would have gone for. Oh wow, and a draw here. That's unexpected for me. I very much so would have expected the ramp.
His
I think
hand's
he's
pretty stacked. I don't think he needed to do that.
I think
Yeah,
he's trying to get
especially
value out of Dreaming Tree here too. Like he's got double discipline in hand, so I think there's some merit to considering that with when moving to the Kiana over there rather than doing the discipline trade on the Kaisa and then getting stuck at the Vile Mausoleer.
Yeah, but given
But,
the
okay,
context
and-
of that, I would want more runes, right?
Yeah, you'd want more runes.
Sure, I agree.
I agree with that.
And also passing here is very strange. I mean, I'm not sure that I can agree with this line. I definitely think, especially while a Kaisa player is tapped out, you need to take advantage of that as much as possible. I definitely would have cleared the Vile layer with the discipline and then charmed in a couple of units, because that also puts you at 8 in order to Dead Bloom Predator next turn, and then you can set this now Zanya's that you have access to. I feel like that would put you in a much better spot. Typically, the best thing you can do against these Kaisa lists is to remove the creatures they haven't played because they're so creature light.
Yeah, I think if you were moving to the tree, then it makes sense that you would want to channel and then double charm to still clear both Kaisas. But leaving one up is interesting for sure.
I don't think you needed to use both charms. I think I would have just moved in, used my pump, run over the Kaisa, and then brought the other Kaisa into the battlefield, killed that one, and probably just held another charm. I would have channeled the rune. So you can actually still play a Dead Bloom and a charm next turn too. So if something else moves into the battlefield, you can kill that as well. But like, you're holding pretty strong at that point. Now, I can understand not wanting to move into the Vile Maw's lair. Like, that makes perfect sense to me, but then I would be casting both my charms.
Right.
Yeah, as we see a Darius coming out, I did expect that from the players. They also have access to the cleave in order to completely run over this Kiana. Now, we do know they have access to double discipline here, so if they go for the cleave on this Darius here, it will be at least a trade with the combination of Yi's legend ability. But we'll see if that's the line they go for. I would also expect them to play this Watchful Sentry in order to untap it and then get the draw off the cleave from the Dreaming Tree, but we'll see if that's what they go for. Here is the discipline as expected. I think both players were obviously expecting that. There's no way that you're going to move into a Dreaming Tree and not have access to at least one pump spell. And then the cleave in response. So we definitely will see a second discipline here into Arceana. And it does have us the benefit of, since Zonia's retreats in the unit that would have died to our base, we can then reconquer with Arceana next turn, giving us some additional value here with that trigger to potentially draw another card.
Yep. Here we go. Second discipline for the trade. Kiana's now 10 to 10.
It does seem like this has kind of worked out. This does let our player, looks like they're going up to 8 runes here, so they're still going to be able to Dead Bloom into this Vile Maw layer point and clear it. Well, yes, they're giving up the Dreaming Tree point as well, so we can see a double conquer here. I'm curious if that's the line they'll go for. Granted, it would be much nicer if we had access to an additional rune in order to be able to play our charm or hold up a deny or something of that nature. But we'll just have to see what they go for.
I think too, one thing where I would have been sweating, and I understand why the Kaisa player wanted the draw there, but I think if I am the Yi player and I see if he still has that 2-up, so if he just goes, I'll cleave on Darius in the base, I'll get the untap, I'll come in, and I see that 2-up, I'm sweating a lot more about doing this double pump because now there's a lot of potential things that could go wrong for me. Especially like Stupefy is a big one. If they don't have open deck list, potentially smoke screen. There's a lot of things that could just go right out the window there. But once the Kaisa player tapped out, it kind of became easy to just be like, okay, I'm just gonna make my block, use my double buff, and call it a day.
Yeah, definitely. Now seeing the ramp out of the Kiana, this definitely solidifies that the ramp would have been better earlier, as whenever you're having access to like that, an effect like that, it's always better to channel the runes early so that you have access to them for the entirety of the game, whereas if they had drawn that card now, they would still have access to the same amount of cards but have an untapped rune. So when you're playing a card like Kiana, it's always something to keep in mind, as they went for the tasty Feyfolk instead of the Deadbloom Predator, which I can definitely see. You want access to those runes, just like I mentioned, so even if they kill the tasty on the crackback, it'll give you access to a bunch of runes in order to play your Deadbloom, play your Charm, play whatever you need to, in order to hopefully hold the point down long enough for you to secure this game as the Yi player.
Yeah, you definitely don't mind putting this guy in the Vile Maws because you want this guy to die and get your rune count really high.
Exactly.
Surprised we're not seeing an Acathian Rain here. That's what I would expect. Acathian Rain's actually just going to clean up this board pretty nicely and leave both of his guys. Looks like we're getting some judge interference.
Does have deflect, so yeah, this looks like a classic judge call. As something that will certainly happen often in new games, you have to be very clear and careful when it comes to declaring your actions that are made. As soon as you usually pick up a card in order to move it or something in other card games, you're committed to that action, and that typically needs to be followed through. So we'll see if the judges require our player here to commit that, or if they'll let it take it back. But yeah, the Acathian Rain is not something you ever really want to be doing on a deflect unit typically, but if it's enough to get him to 7 points here, maybe that's just enough to lock him out of the game.
It's pretty solid. This deck has a very hard time producing 2 units, 2 accelerates, or 2 units that can enter ready. So that's what I would seriously be considering here is the Acathian Rain. Yes, you're going to end up paying about 4 power for that, but I think it's going to put you in a very good position. It is a little all in. It is very, very committed. So you do have to kind of, you kind of are putting all your chips in the middle of the table when you do that there, because you are going to lose that 4 power. You're going to be a little power hungry for the rest of the game. But I think once you push to 7 here, since he is tapped out, it's going to be very hard for him to be able to clear that. Now, he does have one potential out, which is he can play the E, and then he can untap it with the first mate. So that might have been something that he was considering there. He didn't want to lose to the first mate, potentially.
Yeah, the only other thing that Yi has access to other than the Yi first mate play, like you said, is the charms. As we did see this very strange play of sending both units into the point, I feel like that's something that would not have been done had he not been forced to commit that point here, as we just had to use a Hextech Bolt on this tasty Feyfolk for no actual value. Oh my god.
But no punish, because you just draw the second one off of your retreat at the Dreaming Tree, so you now... The Feyfolk still has... Wait, does the Feyfolk still have 3 damage? No, because combat ended, right? So he doesn't have the...
Yeah, combat's over.
Yeah, he does not even have the 3 damage, so the Ray was just kind of used just as a simple pump to get your student over the Kiana, but I agree. I think we could have probably made a better move, and probably if he had time to think about it a little more and didn't turn those cards sideways in front of the judges, he probably would have made a different play, I imagine.
Yeah, it's...
I think what actually might have happened is he went to motion thinking, because in most games you can like motion to do stuff sometimes, like you can make like a motion, but like there's a fine line, kind of like Colin here said, between committing to a play and just like almost like going through the motion manually. And I think he thought in his head that he was going to be able to just, oh, I'm just like, nah, I don't like that, I'm going to pull it back. And the judges were like, yeah, nah, I think you're committed now.
A lot of players that they think it's a little bit too harsh to have that be a rule, but I have also seen it on the other side, where if you have somebody who's constantly picking up and moving their cards in and out in order to try and get a read on their opponents, you know, if your opponent gets excited that you're sending in a unit and then you try to bring it back and like, oh wait, that means they probably have something, you have to be very careful with the rules because of stuff like that, and people trying to get an edge by getting reads from their opponent based on how you move your cards around. Yeah, it is also an important thing. Not all card games allow you to do it, but in this game, you're allowed to take notes so long as you do not bring them in from outside of the game. So when playing cards like Sabotage, in order to look at your opponent's hands, always make sure that you're writing down what your opponent has access to in their hand, so you know exactly what to play around. Curious what the notes are for.
He's just doing some math. It looks like some quick math.
Yeah, something about trying to play around specific mana breakpoints, I'm assuming. Potentially, as we know that this player has access to Time Walk, and looks like they'll be at all 12 runes next turn. So that is very scary.
Yeah, not where you want to be at 6 points.
Yeah, exactly. So we definitely are going to have to see a commitment to the other point in order to prevent a loss from a Time Walk immediately. But that's what I'm assuming is being calculated. And we're currently at, looks like 10 runes from the E player. So we could additionally see like a Charm, or I do see a Pit Rookie if we have nothing better to do with the rest of our energy, as E is not traditionally known for having too many spells to interact with on our opponent's turn.
Okay, committing the Pit Rookie, committing a buff to the Faithful.
Very interesting line. I'm not sure exactly what is necessary for this buff to be here. The Charm I do kind of understand, as we're just trying to clear the Kaisa deck of any potential units. As I mentioned previously, the more units they have, the scarier it is, as they have so many spells to just kind of get rid of anything that's on the point. I do like this play for the Pit Rookie, as the buff will make it harder for a Cathian Rain to get rid of that tasty Faithfolk. Otherwise, the 6 might is very small and easily gotten rid of, but forcing an additional trigger is definitely a play that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess one of the breakpoints he might be considering with the buff here is that on the defense that brings it up to 9. With a Fox that's shrunk by Thousand Tail Watcher that's shrunk by -3, which would bring it down to 6, and then that Discipline actually would allow him to trade over the Watcher and still keep his big unit.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I'm curious exactly what this player is trying to play around. I feel like they're in a situation where they're definitely not able to play around everything. Okay, as we see the Pit Rookie committed to the Dreaming Tree, I'm assuming this player just believes that they don't have enough to survive without seeing a couple of additional cards. So we may see them committing the Discipline to that Pit Rookie in order to draw a couple of cards and maybe look for a Deny or something of that nature in order to be able to survive the onslaught that is a Kaisa with all of her runes untapped.
The Kaisa player here opting not to play the Hextech Ray in hand to kill the rookie, probably doesn't want to just lose it for free to a pump spell, especially at Dreaming Tree, so maybe he just feels like it's not enough value there. But I would be pretty happy. I mean, if he had the Time Walk, he probably would do it, but we of course have perfect information and know that he does not.
I think he's just looking to set it up in the Cathian Rain. That's what the goal is here, is to just sweep everything up with this rain.
Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
as of right now, he has an almost perfect rain, right? We got what, 2, 2, 2. Yeah, pretty close to perfect. He's going to miss one thing here, I guess. So maybe he could have used the Hextech Bolt.
Yeah, I'm very surprised by this Yi player's play. I know that they typically want to be using the Yi's legend ability. However, that ability does not do anything to the spells of Kaisa. So had they committed their units to these battlefields, it could have made this a lot more difficult for the Kaisa opponent. So I'm a little surprised by that, as now I think this Acathian Rain is just going to clean up the board by itself, even without the need for the Hextech Ray. But with that in tow, we definitely should be seeing this game won by the Kaisa player here.
Yeah, he does get to
and
clean
here
up.
comes the
Yeah,
rain.
because the rain's going to buff the apprentice here.
I'm expecting that we're going to get probably 5 on the Tasty and 1 on the Pit Rookie, or 2 on the Pit Rookie and 4 on the Tasty. Either way, the Kaisa player will probably use the Discipline in order to buff whichever one that wouldn't die, but then we know that the Kaisa player has access to this Hextech Ray in order to answer it. Yeah, there we go. That's the 4 and 2. So, which makes sense. You don't want the Yi player to be drawing 2 cards if they have access to like an on guard, in order to potentially draw that deny as well. But yeah,
Yep. That's the tap out
There's
for
the
the Yi
Discipline.
player, and we know that he's got the bolt, so that should just spell 8 points and have Kaisa taking game 1.
A very interesting game 1. Honestly, I'm as much as I don't like to harp on players' play, I think it just comes down to nerves when it comes to a lot of these things. You know, it's very common to see sloppy plays, like I said, with committing a unit by tapping it like that, or from our Yi player's perspective here, of, you know, if you're going to play the clockwork in the back, you should definitely be drawing the card first before committing to all these different plays. Little things like that can really add up to a tournament run and just give you as much information as possible in order to make sure that you're making the correct plays.
Always remember, guys, RNGs before guarantees. If something is going to give you a random outcome, unless there's a specific reason in your sequencing that you need to do it like that, typically you're going to want to do those things first. So like Collin said, if you're going to draw a card this turn, make it your first action. Just know it, get extra information. There's no reason to do it at the end. It's like, if a great example is if you've ever played Hearthstone, if you're going to Warlock Hero Power, you don't do it as your last action in the turn, you do it as your first one.
Exactly. As we move into sideboard here, what do you all expect to see from our players? I know our Yi player has access to these ramp spells, which I'm not sure if they'll be coming in. These 2 Unyielding Spirits, which almost assuredly have to be coming in. A Primal Strength, and so on and so forth.
I'm not sure if he puts the ramp in, and he is, like we said, he's going to save that obelisk for when he goes second. I imagine that's when the ramp will come in. Maybe it's in here now. It could, maybe he wants it. I'm not really sure what his game plan is versus Kaisa, but I would almost be willing to bet money that the ramp spell is going to come in next game if he makes it there, so he can actually play that on turn 1.
Yeah.
Looks like we're getting a double Grove game here, and our Yi player had to start with just a Zanya's. Not what you want to see when there's 2 Groves out in play.
Yeah, a bunch of draw spells, a bunch of nothing. So we're gonna need.
He does have Confront though.
Yeah,
He does have Confront, so he can cycle into a 2 here and actually attack immediately, which is pretty good. But that's kind of his only Hail Mary at this moment.
Yeah, I don't see any other line here. As you said, at least the Confront would make it so that you're not completely locked out of the game should you draw one of your 9 2-cost units here. Is definitely the best play. Alternatively, should you whiff off that, then you're probably just casting one of these Disciplines to draw a card on your opponent's unit. As we just need to find some sort of action, something to play.
Interesting that Kaisa chose to throw out the Grove when he knows his opponent is probably going to be picking first. So maybe he just figures though that both of his other battlefields are hold battlefields, so I guess he's just deciding that he might as well have both of these out at once.
Yeah, I guess that the Kaisa player probably knows that the Yi is going to hold out a Grove as well. So maybe the game plan is to have access to both Groves so that even if the Yi player is able to lock down one zone, then potentially the Kaisa player is able to lock down the other. As we see a Discipline.
Yeah, he is opting for the Discipline over the Confront.
That's an interesting
What did he
choice.
draw?
And just passing. Wow.
So he might be holding the Confront because he thinks it's one of the few ways to get back in. So like once his opponent gets into these battlefields, he might be thinking to himself, I need to be able to play this Confront and then play multiple units in a turn and potentially clear out these battlefields. But I think that's a little ambitious of him here. God, if he misses another unit here, it's going to be real nightmare scenario.
Does look like he drew a
Sure.
Kiana. And a 2-drop?
You got a Kiana and a Poro, yeah.
Being able to go
Yep.
Confront into the Kiana here. Now, I am
Yep.
surprised to have not seen the accelerate from our Kaisa player here in order to go to 2 points. It's typically you want to be trying to score in increments of 2, as you can go from 2, 4, 6, and then go to that 8th point. You're just being able to win an entire turn faster is a lot better.
Ooh, absolute disaster strikes here. This is absolutely brutal.
Yeah, really surprised he
Ugh.
moved into the point with the Raven Bloom rather than just taking the open one and guaranteeing that you're a 6 on the defense with the Zanyas.
Yeah, I'm guessing that they were afraid of the additional card that the Kaisa player would get. Fortunately, we do have that Zanya's player, so our Kiana is sticking around, but this definitely does not look good for our Yi player already. Hopefully,
Yeah,
we'll be able to turn this around.
Well,
Because we did not
one thing that
conquer...
he
Sorry, I was just going to say, because we didn't conquer that, the Kiana didn't even get any value out of her swing either, which is a bummer for sure.
One thing we do have going for us is this Kiana does still have this deflect, so he can't really kill it with any of his traditional base hitting tricks. He can't falling star it. He can't really afford to a Cathian Rain it. Not that he would want a Cathian Rain, a solo Kiana anyways, but it is not really a great option for him, even if he did.
Yeah. It definitely gives us access to a few more options, as we are seeing an interesting play. I did hear that this player likes to kind of hold up a wall when it comes to these hold points in games 2 and 3 when you're at them. And it honestly is very annoying to try and break into 8 might worth of units at a battlefield when a Kaisa player is holding up 3 energy like this, because it could be so many different spells that you want to play around. You got to play around Smokescreen, you got to play around Hextech Ray, Void Seeker, Stupefies, as we saw on the previous turn, all of which that can just make combat math an absolute nightmare for you. So I'm assuming that's why they're playing all these hold field spells, and we're kind of seeing it here. But fortunately for a Yi player, we can just kind of conquer the other zone and ignore this one if it really comes down to it. And at least that way, we'll both be drawing more cards, which I would say most likely favors the Yi, given that their cards are just a little bit more powerful on average, I would think.
Yeah, I would imagine he's trying to conquer the other battlefield and then use that charm on the Kaisa.
Yeah, I think too this line of shoving everything in the points here is fine, given the nature of the Yi deck, where it doesn't get into these battlefields so easily. So I think it's actually not so unreasonable to do this versus Yi. It's just a little less. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we do see a large amount of interaction out of the Yi player. We have Double Defy, we have the Unyielding Spirit out of the sideboard. While initially looking kind of scary, I think this amount of interaction out of a Yi, something that's not traditional, potentially could cause some trouble for our Kaisa player if they don't respect it.
Yeah, I think on the Kaisa's player's end too, he's considering that his opponent's only untapping to 7, so he's not under threat of the dragon to come and pump the Kiana by +8. So you're pretty, it's a pretty hard battlefield for the Yi to conquer, having 8 might there with only 7 runs.
Yeah. Interestingly, talking about sideboard options, out of our Kaisa player here, I actually saw that last card there is the One of Progress Day. Not something I would have expected to see in this matchup, but maybe they think that they just need access to more cards when they don't have the Dreaming Tree around in order to draw so many. But, you know, with the draws off of the Groves especially, I did not think we would be seeing the Progress Day. I'm curious what they ended up taking out, as I also saw Void Seekers as well, which were not in the original list. But we'll have to see as time goes on. I know typically I'm a big fan of removing their treats and potentially the cleaves, as they're much worse when they're not also drawing you a card. But into this matchup, both of those cards do seem still pretty good. So
Yeah, Cleave
That's hard to say.
especially.
I think, yeah, Cleave's one that I think you gotta hold that to just break through here.
yeah,
Man,
especially
the
when you're
Cathy
facing
and
down
Rain would be pretty good.
Kiana here. The only way that you can really get around Deflect is by leaving your own units, right, in order to run over Kiana, who is conveniently base 6 without a buff for any buff spells. So any of your 4 might units followed by a cleave is enough to run her over. I'm curious what line we're thinking about here. Our hand did look extremely spell dense, but I can't imagine they have anything better to do than just play this Progress Day. I mean, it's currently a pretty empty board. If you're bringing that card in, it has to be for a turn like this where there's not much going on. Oh, wow.
You
They
see
go
a
for the
Thousand
Watcher.
Tail Watcher coming out here. He does have an extra 1 in hand, so doesn't mind throwing out the first if it's going to get a good battlefield conquer here.
Yeah, so this Kiana is going to go down to a 4 on defense, so we would need to see both an on guard and a discipline in order to run this over. But if our player does have that, then I think this game would probably be over on the spot for our Kaisa player. So definitely a very brave move to go for.
Feels like he was pretty ahead this whole game too, so I'm not sure why. He's like somewhat of a commanding lead. Granted, his opponent does have a lot of cards in hand, so that might be spooking him a little bit. It just feels a little all in, but I don't think it's the most absurd call here, especially considering that he is still holding this other battlefield pretty handedly.
Yeah, I mean, personally, as weird of a play as it sounds, you also could have looked at sending in the Watchful Sentry that's back there so that at least it'd be a trade. As it looks like, fortunately for him, the E player does not have it. So taking that point pretty commandingly and potentially causing some issues, as these points look very difficult to break into. I'm not sure how this E player is going to get through this.
Yeah, he's got two
Yeah.
drops, that's it. Like, that is tough.
Yeah, fortunately we are going to 9 energy, so 1 dragon will potentially clear either point for us, especially with only 1 energy available out of our Kaisa opponent here. So we'll have to see what they end up going for.
He will get the trade with the Hextech Ray even through the dragon, though, so that's still something that he is to look forward to. Although, I guess the Yi player will have 1 up still, so he can just deny that. So yeah, the retreat on this Kaisa was probably a correct one.
Yeah, hedging for that dragon, which looks like our Yi player doesn't even have access to. But it does allow this Tasty to get through and conquer the point with the Noxious Hopeful, and at least start scoring some points and stem the bleeding a little bit.
Does our Kaisa player have access to a bolt or something in hand? Looks like there might be some 1-cost spells in there. Can't
Yeah, it's a
get
pretty
good
large
view.
grip, so it's hard to say. Unfortunately, our cameramen are not the best at showing us their hands here, unfortunately.
Usually these events, at least like Magic, for example, has like a hand cam of some sort. I'm kind of surprised they don't have a better one here with all the production value.
Yeah, they do have a very interesting system that you can see at the bottom that seems to automatically update what cards are in their base as well as at each battlefield. But as you see the Tasty there immediately. But it's not as interesting as the cards in hand, as we can typically see what's in play. It's the cards in hand that we don't know.
Yeah, the E player here not worried about a bolt or any kind of combat trick, of course, because he does have the deny up in case he needs it, and there is the Hex Tech Ray, and we will probably see a Defy come down to counter it.
Yeah, I have to imagine you're going to use one of your 2 Defies here. But this also runs into the problem of you tapping out of resources.
And there's the deny.
Yeah.
Yeah, not where you want to be tapped out versus Kaisa, or versus anyone really in this game, but yeah, especially a Kaisa deck.
Yeah, especially holding those Unyielding Spirits and Defies in your hand. Now Kaisa just has free reign to... I mean, if they have the Cathian Reign here, the game will be over on the spot.
Getting so much value out of these holds. So many cards drawn.
Yeah.
Kaisa's already a deck that draws a lot of cards too, so the Yi player, I'm sure, is feeling that grip.
I'm actually slightly frustrated. I don't know if they make them do this, but the way they draw their cards drives me insane. They like take it from the top and put it on top of their hands. I don't know why, but it's driving me crazy watching. And then they like pick their hands up after. Like, I don't know if they're making them do that, but it's for some reason it's driving me insane. I like can't stand to watch them do it.
I'll take note for if we ever play in a tournament. I'll just do that to trigger you.
Just move them right from the top, like.
Yeah, I've done it before sometimes when you're just like praying for that one specific card, but
you're right. Yeah, I've done it. Like I've done it for like dramatic effect, but here they do it every single time.
Second Watcher coming in to clear up the Faithful here.
Yeah, it's looking dire, but we are going to get access to all of our energy next turn. Right, no, we'll be 1 energy off, given that we had to accelerate our Tasty this turn.
Yep.
So maybe with the 11 energy, we'll be able to make something happen here.
Gonna move the Sentry back.
Interesting. I don't know how I feel about this move back. I feel like your original plan was to play around Dead Bloom, so which you would have been able to do by just committing to both points. And if you're playing around a dragon, they could only ever take 1 point. But we do see a couple of charms, but I don't see any
big units.
Large units.
No, yeah, Dead Bloom onto a Fox, followed by a couple of charms on this other Fox and Kaisa would be pretty good for the Yi player, but we just don't have any power.
Yeah, single Dead Bloom, especially because we had access to this On Guard that I see in hand too, followed by 2 charms. Would have been lights out, but fortunately, this Yi list, even post-board, only has access to 2 Dead Blooms. So, I'm not really seeing a line here.
Yeah, his hand was pretty clunky from the jump. I mean, just all spells and Azanias. Like, it wasn't looking great for this Yi player from the jump. But yeah, it's looking pretty dire here. Opponent is at 6 points. I mean, they only need to take both points next turn to win.
I mean, I think our best play, if we're going to continue on, is we can charm one of these Watchers into the other point and then attempt to hold it with one of our units. But again, our units are extremely small here, so plus they'll still have access to both Watchers next turn. So it will potentially give us 1 more turn in order to draw into something. But using a charm to not actually remove a unit is a very tough play.
Yeah, I think this player's face says it all, man. Look at him. He knows there's nothing he could do, man. He's feeling miserable right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's wishing he played more Dead Blooms.
Yeah, wishing I didn't just play one in the side and 1 in the main.
Oh my god, that hand is loaded.
Yeah.
That hand is loaded if you have a Dead Bloom. That's like a lights out. You have a Dead Bloom right here. He could take almost the entire board.
I guess we do have access to the Master Yi champion. That is something that's a little bit large, and that along with the On Guard can trade over one of these Fox, and then we can like start charming.
But for some reason, our Yi player here has already played a couple of things. They committed to a Clockwork in order to draw a card and a Discipline. I don't even think they considered the line with Yi, which is certainly what I would have gone for. I mean, using a Yi, plus you could have disciplined plus on guarded to get into a point, charm out the other fox, and I believe that would have tapped us out, but at least given us some odds here.
Yeah.
I can't imagine there's anything you're drawing into.
That's committing everything to the battlefield here, and we have a Stupefy.
Imagine that'll get denied here, as it looks like we need all of our might in order to conquer this point.
Denying a Stupefy feels bad.
Yeah, for sure.
Never the play you want to make, but if it's the play that keeps you alive. Oh, an on guard.
An on guard, I mean, that's only a +1 because he's coming in with multiple units here at the battlefield, not just basically just countering the Stupefy.
Yeah. Oh, I do see a Hextech Bolt in the Kaisa player's hand. I'm surprised they didn't go for that, but maybe they're playing around an additional discipline. But at the end of the day, I think you're just trying to tap your opponent out of resources. So.
And
yeah, he was able to get the conquer with the small unit here. Of course, we're going to get another draw off of this grove. We've got a giant fox. We've still got units back at home. Looking.
The Kaisa just comes in and finishes this, right? There's no interaction in his hand. It's just charms and denies.
Yeah, we got another fox. Well, there you go. And that's the game.
That'll do it.
I think 2-0 from our Kaisa player.
I think that game one was very winnable. I think that turn where he had the double charm in hand, if he makes that double charm and takes both of those Kaisas that turn, he actually stands a much, much better chance.
Yeah, such a miserable game two for the Yi player. Don't think he had much of a chance there with the way his hand lined up, though I do think that the end steps were, the ending of that game was a little bit questionable. Some of the moves, like not playing out the accelerated Yi, but here is Omega Zero, happy to take home his trophy. He's also getting the championship ring. Really hoping we get something like that in North America at some point. I would love to walk around with a big old riot ring on my finger.
Yeah, unfortunately, you'd have to beat me in order for that to happen. So.
Well, hopefully there's multiple nationals. We'll all get one at some point.
Of course.
And he is signing the screen. I don't know what this segment was all about.
Yeah,
interesting.
Like said,
interesting camera angle for sure. Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Well, that's going to conclude our video, guys. Thanks for watching our commentary, and hope you guys enjoyed. If you like what we're doing, then subscribe for more. Leave a like on our channel, and go ahead and comment if you have anything about our commentary or any advice for us, or any other games or types of content you'd like to see. Just let us know. Challenger TCG now has a Metafy. Wow. If you would like to support our content so we can continue doing what we are doing, then please consider subscribing to any of our Metafy tiers. Not only will you be supporting more content like this, but you will also gain access to our community Discord, where we do live streams, Riftbound product giveaways, host VODs of our competitive testing sessions, and offer one-on-one coaching sessions. The members of our team are seasoned veterans of the competitive TCG world and have seen multiple successes across a variety of games. We also have written deck guide content available for free right now, and will be providing additional guides at no cost in the future. So check us out, even if you can't subscribe, if you are looking for high-quality competitive content.